Okay, here's another example from section 5.2a. We've got negative 4 times parentheses 3a to the negative first, b to the third, close parentheses, to the negative 2 power. So remember that you're going to look at this and say, I've got factors, basically three distinct factors on the inside. Negative 2 is the power that's raised on the outside, so I'm going to end up raising each of those on the inside to the negative 2 power. And ultimately you'll multiply the negative 2 with any powers that are already there. I'll do the tutor mode. This is kind of a borderline example in terms of being able to talk it through versus you seeing the tutor mode and the steps. But just to be safe, we'll do the steps out. And so what you should end up with inside the parentheses are 3 to the negative 2 power, a to the negative first to the negative 2 power, and b to the third to the negative 2 power. Okay. And then they want you to multiply those powers if they're not already figured out. The first one's already figured out as 3 to the negative 2. And notice how we haven't done anything to the negative 4 out front. Remember, you're not going to touch that when you deal with these powers initially because it wasn't inside the parentheses. So 3 to the negative 2, a to the, now notice the powers here, negative 1 times negative 2, that's a double negative, so you're going to end up with a positive 2 for that power, and then you're going to end up with b to the negative 6. So we've got negative 4 on the outside, 3 to the negative 2, a to the second, b to the negative 6. We'll submit that. And let's see, from here, what are they looking for us to do? Well, what makes sense to me, and we'll see if it makes sense based on what they're saying, is that 3 to the negative 2, I can expect that you're going to end up throwing that down bottom as 3 to the positive 2. So I'm expecting that to happen. I'm expecting a squared to stay as a squared on top, and b to the negative 6th is going to get thrown down bottom, so we're saying 1 over b to the positive 6th. Sometimes I have trouble guessing exactly what they want in these help boxes. You may have the same issues at certain points, but they still do a pretty good job, you know, based on the complexity of some of these examples. So let's see if they like that. Yep. Alright, so we're looking good there. I flipped the negative powers down below, positive powers up above, or stayed up above. So we end up with a fraction that combines all that stuff of saying a squared is on top, and then down below 9b to the 6th power, which should end up being as a final answer when you multiply in the negative 4. The negative 4 is of course on top. When it kind of floats around in the middle like it is right there, it's technically negative 4 over 1, so remember it's technically on top, so it should naturally go up there with the a squared, and then down below still 9b to the 6th. And that's the final answer. Alright, so we're cruising along. We just did number 10 of 15. This is number 11 of 15. Doing the steps out on this, we could talk it through. Let's keep going with the tutor mode. It's not a bad idea. So we got, in parentheses, negative 3 times m over n to the negative first power, and that's all being squared outside the parentheses. So remember, with fractions, raising a fraction to a power is the same as raising the top, negative 3m, to the second power, and it's the same as raising the bottom to the power. The bottom was n to the negative 1. Okay. So we've determined this step, and then when you square negative 3m, what you're squaring is negative 3. Notice they've got the parentheses already wrapped around for us. And you're squaring the m. And on bottom, I'm catching on to their pattern here that they're going to have you, since it's already just one thing, they're saying go ahead and multiply. 2 times negative 1 at the power level. I've got a negative 2 for that power there. Okay. And so on top, look at what they had for a previous step. Negative 3 in parentheses squared times m squared over n to the negative 2. That's going to give me a positive 9, right? Because you have an even power with the negative below. That's a positive result based on the even power, and m to the positive second. No more need for parentheses. And on down bottom, n still to the negative 2. Okay. So from that step, they say, what's the final answer? Well, you're supposed to say, all right, negative powers. N to the negative 2 is the same as n to the positive 2 if I put it up top and multiply it with what's already there. So my final answer isn't even going to be a fraction because the denominator is now 1 and we don't need to show that. So simplified final result would be 9 times m to the second times n to the second. And you'd be all done.